Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome to a guided meditation. Um, Before I hit record, we have already just kind of jumped into a conversation about guides. And I forget that this is a topic that is like a thing. So I totally thought I could just like come in and we would kind of like uh create I almost want to say like create fields of guidance um, with different layers of guides becoming, let's say, refined. But there's a lot of comments in the chat that I think would maybe be important. I don't want to just like jump into the whole topic of guides. I'm gonna like take us like piece by piece so that I can actually like facilitate a meditation. For folks that are really interested in this stuff, I have a 12-week immersion that's now a 15-week immersion where we spend much more time with this. But I will say in general, as a practitioner, um, and I do talk a lot, right? But I talk a lot so that we can have experiences that are informed. Um, I don't think anyone is going to be able to give you all of the answers with these questions. I think the questions are meant to bring us closer to our guides. So if you're like, how do I find out who my guides are? Um, I would say, um, find your answer to that question. And that you probably have that question because your guides have a lot of information and insight that you need to hear. Um, so hopefully I can like get us to a place where we can hold these questions with great skill and then like be able to open some of those closed doors. Um, the first thing I'm going to share is I am of the school of thought and of the framework that, you know, there can be consciousnesses that are infinitely vaster than I am, but they don't have a couple of things that I have, right? One, they are not in this body. So therefore, they're not an authority on my lived experiences. So, you know, and again, certain traditions have their guides be ancestors, and a lot of our ancestors are held to be like all knowing. And I'm not of that school of thought, right? You know, just because somebody died before me doesn't mean they know more about me than I do. And that's like a little bit sacrilegious, you know, and like shots fired at my great grandma real quick, you know, she's upset, right? No, I'm just kidding. Um, and you know, and truly, I do connect to my ancestors with huge respect. And my grandmother, who I got to learn a lot from, set things in motions in this lifetime that I'm still barely understanding now. And the work that I do now, like she prophesized, like truly. And from the time I was like 3 years old, like trained me to be here, sitting in front of you, you know. So profoundly, like incredibly brilliant person and human being. And if she was alive today, I wouldn't ask her for insight on like what to post on my Instagram feed, you know, or like how to write a newsletter, right? I wouldn't ask her that. One, because she'd never used a computer in her life. When fax machines came out, she used to be like, just send me clothes over fax, you know, and then we'd be like, we'll send you clothes. We'll send you clothes. Don't worry about how we send it, right? So again, brilliant human being. I'm still unfolding her like dreams of who I would become. And I have had visions of how she called me to this earth. And there are things that I am in a position to better answer than she is. And if that's one small example, then there are many things that not centering myself would limit the beauty and insight that I have lived, right? And I think if I'm doing that with my ancestors, right, then similarly with my guides, just because they don't have a body doesn't mean anything. You know, like we do sometimes that happens, right? We're just like, well, a voice answered, and I'm like, are they qualified to answer though? And I'm like, well, they answered, and I'm like, but what information are they using? Like, what's their criteria? So if I'm like, who should I date? And then they're like, this person. I'm like, who said that? And I'm like, wait, guide in the back. And then they're like, my bad, bro. I like making messes, and you're like, they're my mess making guide. They're my how to start a street fight in 3 sentences guide. So, and I'm trying to be funny and playful, right? Because I think it can be that way. I think there can be a lot of rigidity around our guides being all knowing and that being safe. And that's cool. And if you're on that team, you're on team safe, then like all the power to you. You probably should tune out now because I'm going to keep saying triggering things, right? Again, I'm of the school of thought that if something is answering, then it needs to be qualified. And just because it doesn't have a body, sometimes I'm specific, so I'll ask and tune into my guides to find out when the last time they had a body was. And if I have a guide who's a warrior from 300 years ago, then like I'm gonna keep their information informed by they were a warrior 300 years ago. I'm not gonna ask them for relationship advice, right? And then they're like, whoa, have you tried fighting about it? And I'm like, yeah, definitely not helpful right now. They're like, well, I would probably just go and try to conquer that country, and then that's gonna fix the disagreement in a lot of ways, and I'm like, yeah, definitely not cool. Definitely not a cool movie. Did not age well. Your approach to things didn't age well. Just gonna say that, right? So, but 300 years ago, maybe that was a way to handle conflict, and that's important, right? If I'm in a conflict at work and my great grandmother answers, or my grandma, and she's like, throw hands, right? I know that it's because she loves me deeply and doesn't want to see me hurt. And the information that she's sending me is informed by that closeness of her and I relationship, by her reaction to me being hurt, and then maybe even like her skills in communication and conflict. So we're already jumping into like the deep end here. So just to reiterate it, right? I don't think, again, in my opinion, my guides are perfect, but I think they have information that contributes to me. And I also believe that I have information that contributes to them. And that's why we go through the whole effort of relating. So they are gaining something by watching me navigate conflicts, by seeing me experience the world. Those warrior guides see me as a warrior being kind and gentle, and that contributes to them. And that's why we're collaborating. And so mutually beneficial is, to me, central to my relationship with the divine and with my guides. And so when I use that as a criteria and as like a foundational, like cornerstone, then I just continually double check that my relationships are mutually beneficial. And in order to find out if that's true, then like my guides have to know who I am. They have to know about my life. They have to know about my priorities and what I'm doing. And through that dialogue, sometimes our guides are really surprised of where we are and where we live and what time, what country, what body we have. Like, and again, if we believe our guides are perfect, there isn't much space for a deepening in relating with my ever-evolving personhood, right? Like if our guides are stationary, then so is our dynamic. And therefore, on some level, I would say, then so am I, right? So if my guide's a healer and all they do is heal people, then I have to be a person who heals people. And that's like what I do, right? And for me, I'm like, sometimes like it's really important to like not force healing some people. Like sometimes the biggest healing I've been able to offer somebody is to see them as an incredibly capable, incredibly thoughtful, perfectly on their path. And even if they're making messes and like floundering in it, that I see that as a choice that I respect them making. Right. And that can be a healing. But if my guide is one dimensional and then like my relationship with them one dimensional, then like I'm doing healing hands on them. I'm like, oh, you made a mess again, bro. Here, I got you. You know, and I'm like, was it at work this time? Oh, cool, cool. Oh, is that a mess at home? Oh yeah, well we can fix that. Right. And I'm just like fixing people. Um, but if I get to have nuance and get to be refined, then this guide who is healing people, right? I get to evolve my definitions of what a healing could be. And then our relationship can continually evolve. And then it's not it's not hierarchical, where because they don't have a body, they know more than I do, right? It's actually that I know things that they don't, and they know things that I don't. And you're like, they might be bigger, right? The earth is much bigger, but I contribute to the earth. What do I contribute? Sometimes I contribute lots of love, right? I'm little compared to the earth. So I'm not saying I'm like more important. Obviously, that's not true, right? Like no one lives on me, right? Like currently, no one lives on me, right? Actually, there's little bugs I'm sure that live on me, and I'm like an earth to them, but they're not, again, like they're not more or less important. We are differently important to different people, right? Like my mom, if something happened to me, then like that would be like the earth shattering. When there was an elder who trained me that when she passed away, it was like the sun going out in the sky. Like truly, like I had no idea what to do when she passed. Everything dissolved. And because that person was such an anchor to me. And I'll say it to allow there to be gravity and weight to my lived experience is a very important step, in my opinion, when it comes to relating to our guides. Again, it's overwhelmingly hierarchical, overwhelmingly rigid. So that's what I wanted to do today. I'm gonna check the comments. I know that there's probably lots of questions. Maybe real quick, somebody asked like, what are our guides? And I would just say it's a mutually beneficial, when examined, right? Relationship with another consciousness or another being. Um, Depending on how you set that up, your guides can be your ancestors. I keep my ancestors energetically parallel to me, and they are behind me or around me. And I keep my guides slightly above that, not because of hierarchy, but because I want to know when was the last time they had a body. And if a being is like really close to source, I keep them up here really close to source, because maybe they've never had a body, right? And so if it's like this, profound being of like brilliant light, I'm gonna keep it up here, because if I'm gonna be like, hey man, I got in this conflict, they're like, love. And I'm like, okay, for sure, man, but trying to figure out like what to do with this job, and they're like, love. And I'm like, all right, man, I'm gonna ask my grandma. And my grandma's just like, man, fuck that person. And I'm like, oh, thanks, grandma. That's more what I was looking for. Right. Like that clarity around what how, let's say, like, I don't want to open a whole can of worm, but like let's just say how close to source and how full density and impersonality they are. Right? Full personality, full density, there's likes, there's dislike, there's judgment, there's projection, right? My grandma's got all of them, right? And that I'm going to hold here, versus if it's like a brilliant archangel, they don't have like and dislike. They don't have trauma, and I do, right? So they're gonna be like, have you tried cutting through the trauma? And I'm like, yeah, bro, I have. I was 5. I mean, I guess I could try it now, right? But I'm like, I don't know, man. It's not super helpful. You know, they're like, everything is light. And I'm like, it is. Don't get me wrong. But, some light is more cool than others. And I really prefer when the light's nice to me than this jerk over here who's also light but isn't cool. Right. So, anyways, so any being that I collaborate with, that there's a positive contribution, I would say is or can be a guide. Some of these beings, if they have a lot of personality, and let's say if they have agendas that are more than just working with humans, then like there's complexity, right? There are angels that help humans, and there's a lot of angels that like don't really care about humans. Again, I know I'm like getting into some weeds now, yeah. I have found that there are beings that aren't necessarily interested in helping humans. And then there might be beings that are like profoundly, deeply invested in helping us. And I have found that you just want to like be specific about who you're talking to. And again, I'm gonna reiterate that just because I know that like like set some things in motion in the field. There's when I have visited other realms, and I have found that there's angels that they're just like doing things. They're like moving energy, they're moving information, they're just like in charge of radiating light. They're just like, and I'm like, hey, I need help. And then they're like, bro, I'm trying to like keep light moving. I'm like, oh yeah, for sure. That's cool too. And like there's gods and like beings that keep water flowing and parts of the earth moving. And if you ask them for help, they're not, they're busy. I'm like, so, so should I date that person or not? I'm just curious if they're good for me, in your opinion. And again, they're keeping light flowing. So anyways, let me just check the chat real quick. And if there's too many, I'm gonna have to, you can like email me, or I can just copy and paste these things. Folks are asking very specific questions. Are angels the same things as guides? Damn, yeah, I have really good questions. Okay, I did open a can of worms. Okay. So damn. All right, let me put a couple more things out there. So then if any being that I'm positively collaborating with, what I like to do is just have layers of them. So my ancestors, again, I have them around me because like I know them. They have contributed to creating my physical body. And then that's where we meet. Like there's this place where like my literal DNA and their DNA overlaps. That is my criteria with my ancestral lineage. If there are ancestors that are not of my blood lineage, then I treat them as like a guide, right? And I don't borrow or appropriate them, right? If they're not of my tradition, and actually even I'll be more specific, even in my lineage, and even going back to my grandmother, she is from a particular community in a particular part of Mexico, and both sides of my family come from there, but I wasn't born and raised there, right? So I honor that, but I don't like claim that because it isn't my lived experience. My lived experience is like I grew up in the hood, I grew up in Los Angeles, right? Like, so that's what anchors my identity, not someone else's identity. And the overlap is that like my body is like in this stream of like their birth, death, life, birth, death, life, right? Like I'm the next one. So like I can resource into them in a particular way that even if somebody, again, and I am initiated into certain traditions, and I do have access to particular teachings of there as a guest. And I relate to it as a guest. And I don't pull even on my own ancestral lineage and make something that is theirs mine. I let my lived experiences be centered and be informed by them. And then I can contribute something to them and not extract from my own ancestors. And I know I'm getting like deep into some shit here. So, but again, I think that is important to be mutually beneficial, non-hierarchical, that even my ancestors, I can contribute to them. With my guides, I have a set of guides that is like an inner circle where like my collaborations with them are deep and across lifetimes. And like where they start and I stop gets blurry, right? Where like their pure expression of wisdom and my pure expression of wisdom were like right next to each other. And that's like my spiritual ride or die crew, right? And I hit them up for sessions. What's really fun is like, because I've set up this non-hierarchical system, they hit me up for sessions sometimes. And we do cool projects, right? Like we do fun shit all the time. Then next, I'm gonna have a set of guides that like I said, this mentor of mine, he has guides that he calls on for parking spots. And like, that's cool. And for me personally, where that guide starts and I stop is really clear. You know, I'm not like the god of parking spots and then so are they. And then we collaborate and we just like really prioritize parking, right? Like, no, sometimes it's just like, hey man, it'd be really cool. And then he's just like, yeah, I can help you out, right? But he's obviously helping out other people, probably, right? Or he's probably like hanging out in parking lots somewhere. I don't know what he does at his off time, right? And then I even have like more you can imagine like elemental beings. And like an elemental being for me would be protecting a body of water. And its primary function is to protect that body of water. But isn't, you know, so like I would nourish that being by making offerings to this body of water if it's important to me, if it's like in my like little home and surrounding area. And like we're cool, right? I respect them. Hopefully they respect and like are like, hey, that, you know, most humans are weird and they take lots of pictures and do weird stuff, right? Like sometimes I've gone on like hikes and like been out in nature and they're like, are you one of those picture people? And I'm like, I didn't know what that meant. And then I looked at Instagram and I was like, holy shit. Even elementals are like, I don't know, we don't want to be in one of those like Instagram reels. I thought that shit was hilarious. But anyways, so maybe I find an elemental, but they're even less a being that I call on to help me find parking, right? They're a being, again, that their role is to protect this water. And we can collaborate, right? And I can support it in that way. And then because again, I'm thinking about a specific being that I live in this area, right? Then like it can contribute to me in positive ways, right? And even just, you know, being a good neighbor in the spirit world, I guess matters too. So, damn. Let me check the comments real quick. Can doing diplomacy in the spirit world. Okay, actually, okay. So this is helpful. Okay, good. So, my hope in this class wasn't for me to break that whole system down, but I'm realizing that it's important. All we're gonna do in the next 25 minutes is like allow ourselves to move through those layers and just double check that they know who I am and that they want to be in relationship with me. Because there might be beings that have been stuck there across lifetimes that I had karma with, that I made contracts with, you know, 8 lifetimes ago, that maybe no longer apply. And we're just going to like bring that up to date. This ride or die crew, they're gonna be with you, right? And Sometimes people get a little scared to like, kind of like tune into their guides and like ask a question like that. Um, that ride or die crew rarely shifts for people unless they're doing like hella inner work. If you're doing big inner work, this inner crew can kind of like shift out because you guys have done homework assignments that were meant to be completed. Like, you kind of like got through that project and then they move to bigger projects. They kind of graduate. Sometimes they go back to like doing other pieces, right? But this ride or die crew is like typically really solid, right? This second layer, that's the one that, again, based on where my life is, I'm going to be calling on different beings. Right, like with COVID times, y'all, and in Tucson, like I've never worried about parking. I'm gonna visit LA later, and I'm gonna call on a parking guide, right? I'm gonna be like, hey, heard about your work, love the work that you do. I'm gonna slip him a 10, I'm gonna be like, yeah, bro, like, can you help me out? Right. I'm gonna try to like name drop. I'm like, oh, Art Geiser? I'm like, he and I are like really close, actually. He told me a lot about your work. Anyways, but depending on our circumstances, right, we might want to consciously collaborate with specific beings that can help us, right? And then that third layer, that one I'll say is quite dynamic, right? Based on, places that I'm frequenting. If I've moved, then like, I don't want to have a little local spirit from like another country because like I'm taking them away from places that they could be, right? And like a little elemental being that's supposed to be protecting water, but he's like stuck in my kitchen and he just makes my kitchen weirdly cold, right? Like, which happens sometimes, yeah. Like they're pissed and I'm pissed, right? Because I'm like, why is my kitchen so cold? And then they're like, bro, it's cold because I'm trying to go home. Like, let me go home, right? So that third layer, right, is where we can kind of update and like release beings. And then we'll spend other sessions clarifying our relationship to like our inner crew. So let me just double check them. All right, cool. Okay, so sorry that took so long. We're gonna create a beautiful container. So let's imagine that we're all in this beautiful energy bubble. And that in this energy bubble, we're setting all these like important intentions. And I think it's important that like this is a space where all of us is welcome, where resistance is welcome, where we can have reactions, where you can disagree with a lot of the things I say, where a lot of the things I say are my opinion and do not have to be anyone else's opinion. And we're here to get that next piece of information that's going to help us and have that next breakthrough, learn that next piece of information that helps us engage our world with more meaning. Good. And then we're going to bring all these beautiful earth and universal energies. And we're also, today working with our guides. And just imagine like your inner wisdom is completely in charge of like this work. And the earth and universe are bringing in the resources to help you do this work. And then we're going to call on vaster guidance. And we're going to start with that criteria, right? We're going to start with a relationship with guides in all these different layers that is mutually beneficial, that contributes to my growth and well-being, that contributes to our guides' growth and well-being. I'm also going to use the criteria that these relationships are in current time, meaning that this guide knows about us, knows where we live, knows how old we are. Perfect. Good. And then now we're going to bring our awareness to our individual aura. And just let yourself kind of notice the edges of your aura, kind of like notice what your bubble is up to. And real quick, you can just see if there's any layers of your aura that feel stuck. Sometimes there could be tears in our aura. And just kind of give yourself permission to a lot of awareness, compassion, excitement, love. Fill some of those spaces. And all these beautiful earth energies, we're going to just mobilize them and direct them so that they can support us doing this work in a really grounded, really stable way. We're just going to start to open our upper centers and just imagine that all of the collaborations with other consciousnesses, other beings, that they just get permission to kind of open. Good. You can just kind of share with them that you learned about this thing called mutual benefit. And you're like, I just want to try it out. As we open these layers of collaboration, we're going to imagine that there's an inner layer. And again, those are our guides that are our spiritual ride or die crew. Or across lifetimes, we've collaborated. We're going to have that second layer of guides. And this second layer of guides, imagine that these are the beings that you call on for extra help, or maybe with specific projects in mind. But maybe they're part of somebody else's ride or die crew. Or maybe they're kind of like busy, not necessarily that inner circle. And again, we're just letting that open. We're just letting that be held with awareness. And then we're going to imagine that outer layer. And these are now like little elemental beings, little spirit buddies. And these are beings that have specific jobs. They're up to specific things. And just that your inner wisdom in collaboration with this energy container, the earth, universe, your Akashic, just start to light up whatever is important for you to see or relate to. And with that inner layer, I like to imagine I make a chair for each of my guides. And whether I see them or not, on each of these chairs, I like to imagine I have a little pamphlet of information about me. And that could be information about your day, where you live, how old you are, your hopes and dreams. As we're bringing that clarity in, let your guides choose if they would like to transition to someone else, another place, you can still call on them. And if that's the case, we can just imagine we throw this like really big graduation party for them. And then if there's any guides that after getting that information, they're more informed of how they can help you, and just let almost like their seat clarify. And then we can make all these beautiful offerings to them and really allow that line of communication to deepen. Again, creating mutual benefits as we make offerings to them. Imagine that we're just offering these things to contribute to them. And if there's any new guides that want to come in, just let yourself call those beings in. Again, just allow there to be a lot of celebration for these beings, for the closeness and their mission and your mission. Again, we can contribute positively to them. And so I like to imagine like for them a whole sky filled with flowers. I give them little books to read sometimes. Any book that you really enjoy, you can like, y'all check this Buddhist book out. Sometimes the guides are avid readers. Good. You can just let that be like getting installed, being downloaded, being integrated. Actually, for the sake of time, let's just imagine that we open up that second layer of collaboration and that third layer, collaboration. And here we're just going to start by allowing any, with that criteria of mutually beneficial, any being that's ready to be released. Just allow your inner wisdom in collaboration with this container to just start to let that open. Allow them to gently release. And again, I like to send them off with a little graduation party, thanking them for how they've contributed. I like to pack them little lunches. And again, as those beings are releasing, if there's any beings that would like to take their place, if there's any beings that after getting that new information from us, they are like deeply committed to being in collaboration, And so we're just allowing that pamphlet, like a little energetic tour of our life to clarify and deepen even more of these relationships. And while that's happening, we're going to put magnets in front of us and behind us to release energies. We'll refresh our connection to the earth. We continue to recall our authentic energies. Let this evolve our identity, our self-concept. We'll let it evolve our reality and belief structures. For many of us, it's going to contribute greatly to our timeline. So just let this be offered back in time, forward in time. And if there's any changes to our timeline, just letting that come in gently. And a lot of us are doing this big work in really subtle ranges. So just let yourself kind of like gently come back to your body. Let this work be installed in your different energy centers. As we refresh our connection to the earth, let the earth ground and support you. Bring a lot of stability. For a lot of us, there's quite a few evolutions that we can bring in on our perceptive abilities. These are often going to happen in our crown, third eye, that whole kind of like area. Just kind of open to those. And then if we have any like pressing questions, just imagine like you can let your guides support you with those questions. So instead of kind of seeking external answers, let those questions bring you closer and closer to your guidance. Let those questions bring you closer and closer to your own truth, your own insight, your own wisdom. Perfect. And then we're going to intentionally individuate. So imagine that we all start to recall our energy from one another. So recall your authentic energies from everyone else. Give everyone their authentic energies back. Do that a couple times. And then we're going to imagine that we take this container and we offer it to the universe. And so anyone who wants to build a relationship to their guides with lots of nuance and specificity, a relationship that's mutually beneficial, we can offer this container out so that all they have to do is like want that. And then energies like this become available to help them. And it just makes this path like a little bit easier. And it helps people who are interested in growing just like feel really proud of themselves. People who are interested in this work having just like more support. Okay, and then we're gonna put magnets in front of us and behind us again to clear energies. We'll refresh our connection to the earth. Our guides recall our authentic energies. We'll bring lots of sparkles in. And boom. Boom, boom, boom. So good job, everyone. We kind of did a lot. I did a lot real quick. So there's probably lots of questions. I do have a class I'm gonna run to. I thank y'all. Good job. I think we could spend some time working with guides. There's a lot, I mean, this is lifelong work, so it seems like there's a lot of excitement. So we can spend like a couple of sessions and kind of deepen these different components. And I'll, instead of talking about everything, I kind of gave the map today. I'll maybe just pick one thing and then like let us deep dive it. I will say, with working with our guides, you gotta practice it. Like the way I describe it often is like it's like a friendship, and like let's say you meet somebody and it's like random, you're at the store, you like reach to grab your favorite cereal and then they're reaching for the same box and it falls and it falls on like in their cart, and then you're like look over at them and they're wearing the same outfit you're wearing and you're like, oh my God, you're like my new best friend. And then they're like, I'm so ready to be besties, right? But then they text me and I never answer. They like invite me to places and I never go, right? Like it can be infinitely synchronistic. And if I don't do my part, that relationship and friendship can't blossom into something deep, right? Like they have to text me and I have to reply, right? I have to send them funny memes that make them laugh, right? When they invite me to places, I gotta go and like eat Thai food with them, like and have green curry, which is also their favorite. And they also get it medium spicy, right? Like I have to do that. And if not, even if it's incredibly synchronistic, even if like, the universe was conspiring for us to meet in that moment on both of our birthdays, and you're like, oh my God. But if I ignore their text messages, there won't be a friendship, like if I don't make time for it. So similarly, you can have a ride or die crew that they got your back. And these are like some badass guides. But if you don't open to relating to them, nothing will happen. Literally nothing, zero. It just won't happen, but you can literally just text them funny memes. You can just be like, how you guys doing? And they're like, we're good, and just engaging with them will deepen that. And we'll continue that. So, and is it possible for guys to walk out and be upset after they get the brochure? Generally, no. I think the guides could be upset because they thought you were one thing, but you're no longer that thing. I have seen that happen where you're, like those guys are like, we thought you were a warrior. And I'm like a small warrior, I'm like a working with kids kind of warrior, and they're like, nah, you're not a warrior, right? Like, so I'm like a warrior of love, right? Like, thanks, Fatima. That's I appreciate that, right? And they could be like, nah, we're not interested, right? So that can happen, but because it's the intention is about mutual benefit, it's more like they're disappointed, or they're like surprised. But it shouldn't be that any guide is like pissed of like getting more information about who you are. But anyway, so next Monday, I'm going to be in a traditional Chinese medicine seminar, so I'm not going to be here. But then the following Monday, I'll send out emails and we can continue doing this work with guides. I think it's going to be really fun. And then, yeah, we can just keep building together. Cool, yeah. All right. Happy relationship, Thanksgiving, birthday things. Have fun. Bye.